Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Gaming Dadcast. Glad to have you if you're joining on one of the audio platforms. Here's your virtual wave, and if you're joining on YouTube, hello. Today we're going to be talking about TF2 and digital versus physical games. So let's get to it. The Xbox 360 is a console I look back on very fondly. In fact, if I'm being honest, it might very well be my favorite console of all time. Not because the hardware, but because of the games it had and my time playing with my friends on it. So many memories are tied to playing with my friends online. It was such a new concept for me that was like magic. I could play these awesome games that blew my mind already with their graphics and gameplay, but add in the fact that I could play with my friends and chat with them, pure witchcraft, and I was all about it. There are plenty of games I could point to and highlight during this era. Gears of War 1 and 3, Left 4 Dead 1 and 2, and the Halo games. Just to name a few. But one stands above all the others and is somewhat of a rare thing these days. One game took up countless hours and gave so many memories to my friends and me, and I'm not sure any game will ever replace it. That game came in a collection called the Orange Box, and the name? Team Fortress 2. I don't think I had ever dived so deep into any multiplayer game before TF2. Sure, I played a lot of Gears of War with my buds, but we largely played Horde or did the campaign on co-op. The Left 4 Dead games weren't PvP games, so TF2 was my first real foray into online competitive gaming. And boy, did it make a good impression on me. I love the visual style, the colorful palette combined with the gruesome yet comical ways to die, the team aspect of having to work together and choose the right type of character for the match, having to chat with others to coordinate attacks or defense. It just hit me in all the right ways, and it had the same effect on my friends. We would go out into the world and do our adult things, and even if we would go out and hang out with each other, we would head home afterward and game until the early hours of the morning. At first, we really focused on being the best and winning as many matches as we could. Sure, the modes were insanely limited, but we didn't care. There was something so satisfying when the team we chose to be would destroy the other side. But where the real fun and most memories come from was when we got silly. These are some of those silly stories. The first story revolved around our friend Chris. Chris was a bit of a ditz, and we all loved him for it. He was always just there to have a good time and try to mess with people. This was horrible when it affected us, but hilarious when it affected others. His brother Tim was part of our gaming group, and the two would constantly bicker. Well, I say they both would, but it was really Tim who would get serious while Chris pushed his buttons and enjoyed every minute of it. This one game, Tim, or at least my memory tells me it was Tim, was trying to play as an engineer and kept getting destroyed by someone on the other team. He was killed, and before we could go avenge him, the opponent would take off somewhere else on the map. Chris then thought it was the right time to start digging at his brother after so many deaths. Hey Tim, get your head in the game. Tim was quiet at first, so Chris had to up his game a little bit. Tim, seriously? Where's your head at? Because it's not in the game. Definitely not. You should get your head in the game. It didn't take long for Tim to start responding. Dude, my head is in the game. Shut up. If you would do your job and protect me while I build my stuff. Dude, Tim, I didn't ask for excuses. I asked for you to get your head in the game. I don't remember which one of us laughed first, but once the first chuckle came out, it was like a waterfall of laughter. It just was never ending. All of us started to chime in with our own get your head in the game comments to annoy Tim. For a solid hour of gaming, we all were certain Tim would finally leave the group. So we started to ease up a bit. Well, everybody did except for Chris. We all hopped into a new game and we're using the team chat instead of Xbox group chat. And a random dude jumped in. He didn't speak much outside of an initial, hey, what's up, and seemed cool enough. While playing, Chris kept telling Tim to get his head in the game. And finally, it showed on all of our screens that Tim had died. Okay, the death counter. Out of nowhere, the most serious, stern tone I had heard, that rando spoke up. Tim, you need to get your head in the game. We all thought we would die of laughter. I'm pretty certain we lost the game because none of us could see our screens through the tears of laughter. I don't even remember if Tim rage quit or not because we were all laughing so hard. Good job, Rando. Good job. Another story involved another random person who joined our team. However, this time we were in our private chat instead of the game chat. So this rando was a scout and they couldn't hear us. And we all walked up to the gate to view characters on the other team and who they had chosen to be. If you were a sniper, you could look through your scope to see the other team. So we scoped them out and noticed they had a sniper as well. We were all running around in our base being idiots, waiting for the timer to go down while, waiting for the match to start. And right before the gates would open, our buddy, good old Tim, suddenly spoke up. Hey, let the scout go first. A bit confused, we followed what Tim said, and immediately after the gate dropped, our rando scout began to run out and blam! He got blasted from across the map into our base. I mean, it just ragdolled in. The player had barely made it out of the base, and the ragdoll physics launched the character back into the base. We all chortled at the same time. It was so funny knowing that rando had to be cranky. It was funny because it wasn't us. Yet another time when we were feeling particularly cheeky, we decided to do a medic rush. What's a medic rush, you ask? Well, we all chose to be medics and began a healing circle before rushing out. None of us went up to the gate, so we didn't know what the other team consisted of, but they also didn't know what we had chosen. Right before the match was about to start, we all started healing one another in a circle, then bolted out of the door. The sniper on the other team shot at us, but it didn't kill us. We continued to run, moving side to side while we all healed each other. We fully expected to be destroyed. This was just pure silliness, but we pushed forward to the capture point. Once on the point, the enemy couldn't get us off. So we capped the first point. It was then we knew that we could actually win the game. So we pushed forward again. Medic rush full on. One of us got killed, so we closed the healing circle immediately and retreated just a bit. Once our other player respawned and joined our circle again, we began the push again. This happened a few more times, but we made it to the second capture point, and again, once we were on the point, we couldn't be moved off. Right before we were going to cap and win the game, most of the opposing team quit the match. We made them rage quit due to our stupidity winning the day. In a similar fashion, one time we decided to all be spies. Now, if you aren't familiar with TF2, the spy can look like the opposing team until they attack someone and then they come out of their cloak. And they can disappear for a brief amount of time as well, like invisible. Once again, we chose not to approach the gate to give away who we were going to be. And as the timer went off to start the match, we all ran out as opposing members of the other team and immediately vanished. So we went out the gate and vanished. I can only imagine what the other team was thinking when they were about to shoot us, saw everyone rush out looking like their teammates and then just disappear all at once. We then proceeded to go to their site and troll them as spies. While we didn't try to win the game, we definitely did not even come close. Like, it wasn't going to happen. But every 30 seconds or so, one of us would laugh and we all knew they had killed someone on the other team. I think that might have been the game with my biggest kill count ever. Just constantly lying in wait, vanishing right before the enemy walked by, then stabbing them in the back. Seriously, we were pretty terrible players looking back on these stories, but it was so fun. And I know that we got downvoted and there was a rating system back in the day and we all got poorly rated. TF2 is one of those game experiences I really don't think will ever be topped. Sure, I still play weekly with two of my friends from that group, Matt and Scott, and we have plenty of fun. But there was something special about playing TF2 with my friends. I'm sure, as you're listening, there's a game that pops up in your mind that has had a similar effect on you. It's a wonderful feeling, even if your Xbox user ratings get tanked and 60% plus of people don't recommend playing with you due to unsportsmanlike conduct. Worth it? Worth it. All right, so for the topic today, we're going to be talking about digital versus physical games. When I was growing up, we had places like Blockbuster to rent videos and games from. When I wanted a video game, I would buy a physical copy of it. Anything that we owned as a physical version, and that's what made sense. I wanted to listen to some System of a Down, I'd pop a CD into my Walkman. Geez, I feel old just speaking that sentence. Play Metal Gear Solid, insert the disc into the PlayStation. I wanted to watch Resident Evil with my nephews, put that VHS in and enjoy the stupidly entertaining ride. Everything was in a physical format, and the thought of digital ownership was not even a concept in my mind. It just didn't exist. There was no way that it could just be a thing. That's what makes it so wild seeing so many things change from a physical format to a digital one. I don't know exact numbers, and I do know a large amount of people still like physical ownership of things like games and movies, but it seems like the split between physical and digital ownership is around 50-50 these days. It's a much better split. I still have trouble grasping the concept in some ways. I mean, how can you own something that doesn't physically exist? Is this the equivalent of calling dibs on something? This unspoken thing that just simply exists? I never thought digital adoption would be a widespread thing. But here we are, and it totally has become a mainstream thing. Many companies sell their products in a digital format. I mean, it makes sense. No additional cost from cases, booklets, or shipping. You can release a game at any time, and people can download and play it almost instantly. Heck, sometimes you can even pre-download, so you can play instantly. Companies still charge full price for the product, even though many of the costs have been cut. Again, it makes sense to me why companies have headed the way of digital. But from the perspective of the person buying the product, how do I own this thing? Just because it's downloaded on my console? Sure, there are keys and ways for companies to lock these digital purchases down unless proof of purchase is given. And I get all that. But it's still just crazy. It's a crazy concept to me. This is probably just me being an old fart or that old guy yelling from his doorstep to get off my lawn. Speaking of being an old fart, I used to be insanely against digital purchases. Like, I vowed to never buy a digital version of a game. And if that was the only option, I simply wouldn't play it. There was even a point where I somehow got gifted a game named Splosion Man that was on my Xbox 360, and I refused to play it for a while because it was digital. Think about that. I refused to play a game given to me just because it was digital. Eventually, I started to play digital games, starting with Explosion Man, and then I did the unthinkable. I bought my first digital game. My first digital game was Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Some of my friends played the game, and it seemed like a really fun co-op game. I swallowed my pride and took the dive. I bought it, downloaded it on my console. Within the first few days, I realized how awesome digital games could be. I didn't have to change a disc. I could just hop in and out of a game, and it didn't clutter up my tiny amount of space that I had at the time. I would often play with my friend Scott. Fun. And we had a blast with the game. I started branching out to other games, including one of my favorites, Shadow Complex. I was not nearly as opposed to digital games anymore, and in fact, I leaned more toward digital. I didn't know what the word moderation meant. I hadn't learned, okay, as we've talked before. So I started buying digital games more often. However, I learned the hard way that digital isn't all it's cracked up to be in some very, very big and impactful ways. Scott Pilgrim, until recent years, had become notorious for being stuck on the Xbox platform. They removed the game from the store, so if you didn't have it downloaded onto your console already, well, too bad. I hadn't even thought of this aspect of digital gaming, so it hit me hard. I couldn't even carry it forward to an Xbox One or any in the future. I thought to myself, wait, I can't play this on any other console, and even though I bought it and downloaded it, proving I own the game, I couldn't re-download on a future console? What if my Xbox 360 dies? Or the hard drive just decides to stop working? I realized very quickly that digital versions of games and movies have some really big pitfalls. Over the years, this has been emphasized more and more. Another prime example is the more recent loss of the Wii U and 3DS eShop store. It seems like Nintendo has now created a store that will move with the future system, so that's nice. But what about those past consoles? The Wii U is where I really became a Nintendo fan again. And I was also reviewing games for websites during that time, so I had a lot of downloads. I now either have them on my console until it dies, or they just simply disappear from my library. This sucks, and I think the community surrounding gaming largely agrees with it sucking. In other recent news, or kind of recent news, Sony had made an announcement to close down some of their past online stores as well, and there was enough backlash for them to rethink and push back dates, at the very least. From the business side of things, I do understand. Having servers and storage units hold these games for people to download years after their relevancy has passed it's quite a cost to eat. But at the same time, the companies are the ones pushing for this. So shouldn't they figure out ways to make it more sustainable on their end and long lasting? Another aspect is, what if someone hacks into your account and you can't get it back? I've heard some nice stories of people who reached out to the appropriate group and they were able to either gain access to their account again, or they were given the proper compensation, digital library back again, whatever it may be. There are those nice stories. But more often than not, I have heard horror stories where entire digital libraries were lost due to hackers being absolute jerks, somebody getting in. I have no clue why people want to steal things from others when it comes to entertainment items, when it comes to anything. But that doesn't change the fact that this is the world we live in. It is. These things happen. With portable consoles like the 3DS, if that hardware with all the downloaded games on it that can't be downloaded anymore gets stolen or lost, what then? It's a sticky subject, and I can honestly see both sides' perspective in various ways, but it's hard to deny the pitfalls are pretty freaking large. All that said, I still split between digital and physical. I don't know what the split difference is, I couldn't give you a ratio, But my general rule of thumb is this. If it is a multiplayer game or one that I know I will return to constantly, then I'll get digital for the convenience of accessing the game in between my cartridge games or disc. So, for example, I recently bought Persona 5 Royal on my Switch. I have the cart in my system, but I have games like Splatoon 3 and Hades as digital versions. That way, I have one cart game I'm playing, but can quickly switch to Splatoon or Hades whenever I want. I'm also a lot more conservative when it comes to buying digital games nowadays, unlike back in my Xbox 360 days where I just decided I would do all digital suddenly and pay the price. I think there's a fine line to walk there, and each person has a different view on the subject, but it ultimately always comes down to the phrase, buyer beware. When I die, I'm not taking anything with me. So what do I really care about physical? However, I could leave things to my kids. Or what if a store closes and now those games are lost to me forever? It's a tough decision between getting something in a physical format or a digital format. I'm also very hypocritical in other areas, like movies and shows that I can't access in one of the bazillion streaming services we have. If I want to own a movie, I usually buy digitally. Why? Because it's a large enough entertainment setting where I doubt they would just close their servers. There'd be so much backlash. And I just don't want the clutter of all those movies and shows around my house. They can take up a lot of room. A lot of room. Ultimately, I think digital games are a good thing. They should, keyword should, be more eco-friendly. There's less clutter, and there's clearly superior ease of access. But I also I can't deny that things need a change in some ways. We need assurance that our digital purchases will be protected. We also need assurance that our digital purchases won't just vanish one day because the company who sold them decided, too much money to upkeep, close it down. Some storefronts do a good job of this, but I'm not so sure most others are as good. Until then, I'll continue to cautiously purchase digital media alongside my physical media. And I'm going to watch the industry with a close eye. That's it for today. Thanks as always, for tuning in. What do you think about digital versus physical game ownership or media in general? Music, movies, shows, things like that. What are your policies? What are your takes on it? Do you do all digital, all physical, some kind of mixture of both? What are your thoughts? And do you have a game that you have dear to your heart that, you have fond memories of, whether it be with friends or just past memories with that are really fun? I want to hear about this. Put them in the comments below. Email me, bauertendo@gmail.com. You can catch me on Twitch Mondays and Tuesdays, Instagram, TikTok, all those places. Whole bunch of places for you to catch me on. I'd love to hear from you. As always, I appreciate you. Thanks for chilling with me and listening this whole time. And until next time, see ya!